quarter to 7, we'll pop our head out and see whether it's raining or not, and we'll go a little longer if we have to, and have a little chat, and I'll juggle and things like that as well. Firstly, as I already said, Happy New Year, great to have you back. It's already, in terms of subscriptions, it's already breaking records in terms of sales. It's pretty amazing. So it's great to have your ongoing support. It's a big season this year. Oh, quick hands up those people who have already filled out all their subscription forms and done all that kind of stuff. Yeah, see, we love you. You are good. But also, can I say this? You are the risk takers. You are the bit. No, don't laugh, because you are. You don't know if the show's any good. You don't know, you trust us to come along and go, okay, we're going to put our money down and we're going to test it out, and if I don't like it, Wesley, I'll write you a letter and I'll tell you straight. And I love that, because you're the ones who go, I think theatre's so important that I'm going to put my money down and I'm going to make sure I come along and see it. Come rain or shine, hell or high water, whether I like it, whether I don't, and you all believe in the conversation, which is what theatre is. So it's great to have this conversation, this play briefing as well. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Yagara and the Turrbal of this particular country. And I say this all the time, but I love saying it, that this wonderful, what was a wetlands all down here, what is South Bank and around, this incredible wetlands, which we were reminded of a couple of years ago, that it was always a gathering place, and in this place there'd be plenty of food, so you'd gather your family together and you'd go up on the highland just over here, like at Musgrave Park and some of the hills, and you'd always do lots of business. And I think it's no accident that we build a family gathering place and a performing arts centre and an art gallery and a library and a museum in this same location, because it says something about the continuity, the cultural continuity of this particular land. So I always like to acknowledge that as a little kind of memory, if you like. Well, I don't think the Blackfellas had this kind of space, but it is at least a cultural continuation. We're here for the play briefing of Boston Marriage, but we're going to talk about The Lion King the whole time. No, Boston Marriage. It's interesting, when we were talking about a show, Andrea, who is a resident director with the Queensland Theatre Company, we were talking about a whole range of things and going back and forward, and Andrea, you brought the show to us. And a little bit of history, I guess. You have a very strong connection with this particular play.
Yeah, I do. Written by David Mamet, and some of you may be familiar. The last Mamet play that was done at QTC was American Buffalo, and a lot of his plays are very male-dominated. They're very hard-hitting, lots of expletives, Chicago-based, and he wrote this play in 1999, having just done a film called The Winslow Boy, which was an adaptation. And so he was kind of in that mode. So this is sort of like his ode to Oscar Wilde. But anyway, I'm diverting from my relationship to it. I had studied an acting technique called practical aesthetics, which was actually a technique that David Mamet and William H. Macy, who's the very famous American actor, had devised this acting technique, and I studied it in 1994, many years ago, in New York, and I brought the technique back, and it's had a very big influence on actor training in Australia. And I taught in Sydney, because I'm from Sydney originally. I taught at NIDA for many, many years. I still go back and teach the technique at NIDA each year. I directed a show at WAPA last year, and I use the technique, and I teach all over the place. In fact, I just taught a masterclass at LAMDA in London, because I was over there before Christmas. So I've obviously been quite keen on reading Mamet's plays, and one of the directors that I worked with a lot, I set up a company in Sydney, and we brought out a lot of the teachers of practical aesthetics from New York, and one of those teachers was a woman called Karen Kohlhaas, and she directed the New York production of Boston Marriage and gave us the play to read, and we loved it. And Mamet said, great, girls, you got no money, but here you go, here's the rights for nothing to do Boston Marriage. So we're like, oh, great, fantastic. That was a long time ago, but we couldn't, unfortunately, get the money to do the play, which was a terrible, terrible shame, because we had the Australian rights all those years ago. So I've had this play in mind for all those years, and when we were sitting around the table going, oh, what about a Mammoth? And I said quite flippantly, oh, well, if we're going to do a Mammoth, we've got to do Boston Marriage. And we went, of course! Great play for roles for women. Which they really are, 3 amazing roles for women, and a play that I felt passionate about. So it ticked a few boxes for us, which is great. And only 3 actors, that's cheap, Great to tour.
Amanda Muddington is so cheap. You wouldn't, to look at her, you wouldn't think that, but.
Started, Wesley.
No. Tell us. Andrea, just a little bit about the synopsis. What is the story of Boston Marriage?
Okay, so the term Boston Marriage is a term that relates to 2 women who live together. In polite society, women who are in a Boston marriage choose to live together. One doesn't quite know what goes on when they live together. But our women, it's pretty clear what goes on. But look, it is about the relationship between these 2 women, but I like to kind of move beyond that, because really it's a play about the idea of being in a long-term relationship against the idea of young love, and there's the pull, for something new and something fresh and something exciting, and romantic love being this short-lived thing, and then what really, as a lot of us know who've been in marriages, what does it mean to be in a long-term relationship, and I think the long-term relationship wins out, which is wonderful. So that's essentially what it's about. It's really about exploring the dynamic between these 2 women and their hysterically funny maid, who they're really awful to, but she wins through in the end. That's
and just in terms of David Mamet, we've talked about his writing already, and people might know Speed the Plough, or Glengarry Glen Ross, or some of his movie work like Wag the Dog.
Yeah.
That American satire about the political structure and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it is incredibly wordy. I mean, it's a wonderful kind of pleasurable trip in the mouth.
Yeah. Look, he is just a master wordsmith. He really is. His text is just beautiful, and it's a very theatrical piece. I've just been in the UK, and I just loved seeing all the classic work that I saw, where you would see actors just relishing language, and it's so enjoyable when language is really presented well. And Mamet is just the most extraordinary writer, and I've got 3 extraordinary actors who really have that amazing facility with language. So it's a joy. I love it when you go to the theatre and you hear really clever, witty language that treats the audience with great respect, because there's no dumbing down that goes on in this script. And that's really pleasurable for an audience, I think. So,
Amanda, I'm just thinking about, we talk often about these next generations that are coming through being incredibly visual, being about the screen culture and things like that. This is a theatrical play about language, and also about very high-level vocabulary as well.
Hugely.
What are some of the words that get used?
Supererogatory. Tendentiousness. I've sussed out her fulcrum. It is curiosity, and I have her on her hip. I'll bet you a new hat. I mean, I love that word, fulcrum. It sounds so disgusting, doesn't it? But of course it's not at all. And it's delicious. The language is delicious. She's a horror. Do you want my character?
Please do, go for it.
My character is a horror. She's we've been in a long-term relationship, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I am like an older woman with a younger woman. Only a little bit. And because of my use of language, I've actually driven her crazy, because I do not shut up. I speak with such floral language and quite a lot of religious language. I quote the Bible a lot. And she's not religious at all, really. In fact, she's not very well read at all. And a little knowledge is a dangerous thing with this woman. And in the end, it drives Claire, played by my beautiful Rachel here, it drives her away. So the play opens and we haven't seen each other for quite a while, so it's quite tense in the opening. My relationship with the maid is horrendous. I treat her like a dog. I treat dogs magnificently. I have the best dog in the world. I call her the slavey, you know, she's just my slave. And a lot of the comedy comes from my relationship with the maid.
And it is a comedy.
Oh, totally. Oh, it's very funny. Oh, yes.
What makes it funny? What's in it?
I think my relationship with both these women is that I'm desperate to get this one back into my life, and I will go to any length to get her back. I become one of the most manipulative people that you'll ever see on stage, and a lot of comedy comes through that. And of course, the way I treat my beautiful Catherine here, played by Helen Cassidy. Should we try and do that little? Should we give it a go?
If you want to. Oh.
It's just a impromptu performance. Oh, I don't know about that. Okay, so do you want to do the "I love you" or not? Director, where should we go?
God, I've got a script on me.
All right, so this is where Claire tells me that she's actually. She tells me she's in love with someone else. And all the way through the play, I call Catherine any name but Catherine. I never call her Catherine. I get her every single time I talk to her, it's a different name. This could go terribly wrong.
Okay.
Yes.
I am in love.
What did you say?
I said it's Catherine, miss.
Not Mary. Not Mary, I said, or Peggy. Cringing Irish terror, is it? What do you want? Home rule? All small children to raise geese? Oh, Ireland, each and all raised as kings who once strode 5 miles of lighted streets in Liffey whilst the English dwelt in caves. Is that the general tone of your Irish divertimento? Eh?
I'm Scottish, miss.
And it's like that all the way through.
I never stop thinking that she is Irish. For the whole play.
Now, there are accents in this show. Rachel, I might cut past you for a quick second. Now, the Bostonian accent is an incredibly ugly one, isn't it? Is it ugly?
It is.
I always think, the Kennedys, I always go, oh, really?
Oh, I love it.
Oh, we're going to walk out. A walk out.
Already.
Oh, he's going to... Oh, he's got a phone call. Oh, it must be very important. Sorry, go Rachel.
Yes, it's been such a gift to work on this play with the beautiful Melissa Agnew. I hope I'm the right name. I wanted to pronounce it correctly. She's just been magnificent because the dialect that we use in this play is actually a dialect that isn't heard today because it's set in 1906 and unfortunately, a lot of the people that spoke with this kind of Brahmin dialect, which is an upper-class Boston accent, are no longer with us. So it's been a real gift, and Melissa's been very, very adamant that we do it correctly because we're kind of bringing a language to life that is no longer heard. So it's been fantastic.
What are the traits of this particular accent?
It sounds at times, it can sound quite British. But then there'll be a really strange sound like, say, for example, the word parts is said parts. So it sounds quite Australian or, a little bit less cultured. There'll be the odd word where it'll kind of take you by surprise. But dissimilar to a lot of American, the R's, which are normally rolled, aren't unless they're followed by a vowel. It's enough to make your head melt. Everything about this play makes your head melt. It's been really fun trying to do it.
And I joked about the Kennedys, but that was that.
Rose Kennedy,
Kennedy
was the one that we've been listening to a lot.
But there's a bit of a Scottish accent going on here.
Yeah. So Catherine the Maid's from the Orkney Islands, which are in the north of Scotland, and that it has honestly, if you hear the dialect, it's almost indecipherable. So I suppose that kind of makes sense because very often I'm not understood and ignored in the show, so I think it's all right. So good luck. Hopefully you'll
well, that's a question though for audiences, because I know that some of you go, accents can be hard to understand and things. I mean, maybe it's going back to Andrea on this one. I mean, like, how will an audience understand these accents? What do you do as a director to make sure that all comes through?
Well, as Helen said, we have toned down the Orkney Island. It's like, when you hear a really, really thick Glasgow accent and you need subtitles if you're watching the movie because it's too... So they will be completely understood. And, so in this case we have... The accent's very much there, but there's nothing indecipherable about it at all.
And often what we do in the theatre too is it's indicative rather than precise. We go, let's just... Because sometimes you can't understand a particular line if you do the full-on accent. So it's indicative of the accent rather than trying to be so precise along the way. Now, we're sitting in this space now. I was saying before that it's very unusual at these play briefings to have the design as complete as it is at the moment. I know there's still more to come, but this show's being built to tour, and it's going to a number, I'll talk about it at the end, going to a number of regional Queensland venues, and so I guess that's why it's up so quickly. It's designed to be effective and there. What are we... Oh, well, I'll pass it over to Stephen. Yes, that's a good idea. Stephen Curtis is the designer of the piece. Stephen, tell us a little bit about, there's a period here, what we're saying 1906, sorry, thank you, 1906, so this obviously isn't a room, it's indicative of a room. Tell us a little bit about your process and what are we going to see when it's completed?
I don't really think of it as a room so much as a womb, actually. It's very much a play of three women and them, and that they are women dealing with each other in the most extraordinarily intimate way, both physically and intellectually. It felt to me that it had to be a very feminine space. So yes, I think of it more as a womb than a room. But because it's also a three-hander, and often there are only the two, Amanda and Rachel, on stage, just the two of them for much of the night, there was the physical necessity to make a space that's very intimate and that supports those two women in what is actually a very large theatre. So the scaling of the floor, the circular floor that projects out into the auditorium, that was very much a decision about finding a scale for the production that would support our cast in big performing spaces. Yeah. And
I mean, when at the moment we see behind and all that kind of stuff, there'll be some more masking, what we call masking, so black curtains and things to cut off some of the space back there as well. You're not going to be able to see backstage necessarily.
Yeah, that's right. That wasn't a very interesting question.
No, it wasn't even a question, was it? I'll shut up. But why... I mean, you've chosen a series of columns which are in fact quite phallic in a very feminine space, and this kind of very classical look. Why did you do that?
I think Amanda touched on it earlier, that her character Anna trawls every available source of culture in her incredibly elaborate kind of riffing on culture and love and life. So she does constantly take recourse to the Bible, but also the classics. And as Andrea and I were starting to talk about the play and getting our own sense of how to set it, it felt to me that Anna, Amanda's character Anna, was really like a goddess of love, and that she should occupy a temple of love. So, I started looking at Georgian garden pavilions and other buildings that had built as kind of tributes to love, and the rotunda, the circular form, came from that. The classical thing is really part of my thought about there's a very, very brittle surface to the play and its language. It's like a meringue, really. And I've always thought that the classical revival period from just before Queen Victoria's reign was just captured that very brittle sense of high culture perfectly. This is where the play starts. We kind of start at that very high end and a sense of purity and order and a kind of divine order, if you like. But we very, very soon start to trawl the gutter. And you know, no sooner has Rachel entered in her costume, it's just here to our left, then she starts to undress and starts to occupy, throwing her clothes hither and yon, so that it becomes very much a lived-in, the temple becomes a lived-in space.
There's no nudity in the show, though, is there?
Not quite, or not yet.
You touched on the costumes there. I mean, we've got an example of one of the frocks here, and it's not completed yet. There's still bits of...
well, there's an actor to go in that.
Oh,
that's Rachel's costume.
You've gone for that kind of period look in all the costumes then?
Yeah, when I first started working on it with Andrea, I was trying to talk her into setting it in the 1930s, which is a period that is very fluidly elegant and very gorgeous clothes that are very easy to live in and costumes that could become clothes. But the more we worked together, the more important it seemed to be that the artificiality of the Edwardian period was really where the play needed to be. So we're setting it in 1906, and the costumes are they're not faithful to the period, they're a contemporary interpretation, or my interpretation of 1906. I wasn't actually there, and neither were you, so you don't really know. But you know, it did need to look. The costumes do need to look elegant and sexy. Rachel's almost white. She's the light one, and Amanda's the dark one.
And there's I've seen some of the costumes too. That I mean, this is quite plain. By comparison to some of those other throws and floral patterns and bits and pieces that are in the set as well. There's a kind of contrast between the costumes, and a progression in the costumes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Andrea and I both felt very strongly that we wanted to see the women kind of becoming physically connected with each other, flesh actually. So that's right. We did. So, I mean, often when you see a period production, everything's just too good, like too I don't know, bound up in its own self-importance of period. Andrea and I both hate those kind of period productions. So we wanted to be able to find ways to undress the two women as the play went through.
You make it sound really, really saucy, but I think the thing I really love, as we women, you know, we're in our own sexuality, and the idea of sticking actors in costumes where they're, you know, it's all tight and, you know, the collar's up here, and I guess I wanted arms and shoulders, and, you know, where you actually could feel that the women were able to feel sensual, and there's actually not a lot of touching of each other's flesh that goes on, actually. But you, the audience, I think, will get to enjoy the sensuality of the female form, which I think is really important, because, let's face it, it's a gorgeous form. Would that be right, Steve? Yeah.
All the action happens in this one space. The space doesn't change. There are a number of scenes, is that right?
Yeah, there are 3 acts. They all happen in the same room. There was a version of the design where this circular floor revolved. That lasted about 5 seconds. And there was no need to either. The play is all about what happens within the room and the changes between the women. It's not really about what happens to the set.
And there is an entry point. We're not quite seeing it at the moment, but we're saying back here. There's
The upstage curtain scallops up to reveal Anna at the start of the show.
Excellent. Amanda, I'm going to come back to you. What's it like when wearing these costumes? I mean, how do you create character and things in that kind of costume world?
We are in full corsets that have been made for both Rachel and I. And that designer down there, Mr. Stephen, he keeps pulling the corsets tighter and tighter. And we're terrified, aren't we, that we're going to get very hot and not in a sexual way. Yeah, I did. In the end, I said, oh, I love the feel of this, because you can really, you can understand why they did what they did. It makes you feel amazing, because your waist becomes so small and your breasts become bigger as a result of it.
Is that just lack of oxygen that makes you feel that? I'm just thinking.
It will be. I'm not sure how I'm going to do some of the huge phrases of speech that we both have with such enormous restriction and petticoats and heaviness, but it's wonderful. When I put my costume on, I turn into somebody else. Stephen has done the most beautiful job. They are both exquisite. We will find out on Wednesday for the first time what it's going to be like, because it's all very well standing in the wardrobe department being fitted and all the rest of it, but we run around here, we throw ourselves onto a chaise lawn, and we do all sorts of things in it. And so it's going to be a real eye-opener. And of course we've got sensational wigs as well, and Rachel's got hats, and you've got all sorts.
Amanda's very upset that she doesn't have a hat. She's talked about it a lot.
Oh, I love a hat. I do.
But wigs are a big thing, so we're seeing a whole range of things. Jewellery as well.
Oh, well, it's all about jewellery. It's all about an emerald necklace, which is superb. It is, I want it.
But it's very lush. I get a sense of it.
Yes.
Lush in all its meanings.
Yes,
as well.
and my dress is very glamorous, and it's meant to be the morning. God knows what she dresses in at night. But she's very bohemian. We're both bohemian for the day. It was not accepted, this kind of relationship in these days. And you get the idea that many parties went on in here. And we were surrounding ourselves with poets and musicians and naughty people. Naughty but nice. And so, the costumes reflect that. And in between it all, we've got this very cheeky maid who is really, she's brilliant. She's brilliant. I wish she'd do just a little bit more of your accent. Can you do just... I'm putting her on the spot. Just only if you want to. The story of your grandma.
Oh, yeah. The Islanders said she could see right through a man and 2 yards into the dirt that he stood on.
Yeah. She's very good. So,
2 yards into the dirt that he stood on. 2 yards. Yards. In a context, it's very... It's all right, you'll get it.
It's very clear. And there are a number of costume changes as well.
Well, we add on. She takes it off and I add on. Oh, then you add on some more, don't you? You take it off and put it on. There are 2 amazing costumes in the middle of Act 2 that we
What makes them amazing? What's amazing about them?
Will I give it away?
No, don't. They become other folk.
You get the idea that these 2 women dress up for each other a lot and be silly and ridiculous and play characters. It's, I made that thing this morning about my character and Rachel's character. Because the tennis is on at the moment, it's like we are both expert tennis players, champion tennis players. I, in particular, know every single lob and serve and what are those other things they do? I am 300 steps ahead of everyone else. I can see where this conversation's going, and I'm going to cut her off at the end. And it's a very manipulative and very exciting. She's like Quicksilver or what's that stuff? Mercury. It's a very mercurial role in that I just, I dart around in order to get what I want. It's been very difficult, I have to say. Those of you who know how long I've been around, I've taken on some very big roles. This, because of David Mamet's brilliant writing, it has been one of the most difficult scripts I've ever had to learn. You have to follow his grammar, there is no messing about, and you have to take note of his pauses. It's like a symphony. The words tumble out, and our wonderful director is like a conductor. It's musical. There are moments of it's madness. But it's brilliant when we get it right, and we will have it right at the time you come. Thank goodness we don't have our first audience till Saturday. Who's coming on Saturday? Hate you.
No, we don't hate you at all.
We'll probably be, very nervous.
That's an actor. Don't listen to actors, they're always nervous. I'm just going to hand over to David. David, you've lit a number of shows here in the Playhouse in particular. In a space like this, there's certain challenges, I imagine. How do you create ideas of the period or the kind of transitions or the kind of lushness that we were talking about earlier in your lighting?
Like always, you go back to the play. It's an interesting one, this one, in as much in some ways the play and the design makes it incredibly simple for a lighting designer, in as much as it's one set, and it's this space, this floor space that we're on, is the only space that's used, really. So that, in a way, makes it very, very simple. It is not that simple, however. It happens over the course of one day, and some aspects of the lighting are about telling really sort of things about the natural world around us, what's happening in the world around us. Starts in the morning, goes to afternoon, goes to evening. So it's got that kind of drawing room quality to it. However, if you read the play and you listen to the language, the language sounds like something spoken a long time ago. But if you actually look at the words, you can't put it in a period. There are anachronisms there, some very modern words, some very old words, and it's all to do with his theatricality. And so Stephen has not given us a drawing room here at all. This is a very theatrical space. It's a temple of love, if you like. And what that allows me in the lighting is, yes, I do drawing room lighting, and more specifically, probably the part about this is because you've got two actors on the stage, obviously we have to see them, it's a comedy, those sorts of things are really important, but also the costumes become very important. It's one of the shows that I've been more aware of the costumes, the colours of the costumes, playing with the costumes in this space than most other shows or many other shows I've worked on. But the play itself allows us a theatricality, and this space can become very theatrical and obviously very feminine.
So we're not talking about lots of shadows or a shadowy space. It's quite open in that way.
No. It's nearly always a full state. The only time we go into something more atmospheric is towards the end of the piece, as the resolution is taking place.
Are there dominant colours? I'm just thinking about, like, this space is a very open space to colour as well. I mean, you could bring any colour to wash the space and turn it into something else. Are there moments of that?
Look, in terms of the colours, I tend to follow the natural colours of a Bostonian autumn day, so that there's the sense of morning, of sense of afternoon, those sorts of colours. What has been interesting, actually, and I come back to it, is picking out the costumes, because there's a kind of contrast in the costumes. Amanda has a peacocky blue colour, and Rachel is in very warm colours, and it's learning to balance those and get that play happening without favouring one or the other, because they actually respond to light quite differently. So it's playing with those all the way through. It's actually it's a really interesting exercise.
Now, a person who's not here, I'm thinking about Phil, who's the sound designer, composer. I might hand over to Andrew, if I may. Pass that down, thank you. There is some music in the work as well?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but there is. There are some surprises in the show, and I don't want to give them away. Phil has done some composition and some remixing of things. Phil's not here because on the second day of our rehearsals, was it? Second or third day of rehearsals, his wife gave birth to their second child. So he's had a few moments where he's had to...
I'm sick of excuses. I'm just sick of them.
But he regrets not being here. So, but we've locked in our sound design and sounding very, very interesting. I guess we were interested in there being, picking up on a sort of bohemian idea. The tango finds its way in, with the idea that the tango is starting to come up into America around about that time. So the tango finds its way, and it's a lovely, I think it's a lovely sensuality to the tango, and yeah, so the tango finds its way all the way through the play. The girls are determined to tango on for the curtain call. We're yet to see if that's going to happen. But yeah, that's the music that keeps coming in all the way through.
You often talk about, we've talked about lushness, we've talked about sensuality and things. I'm going to hand over to Helen for a quick second. I mean, the character, the costume I've seen is almost very rigid.
Yes.
In that she's almost, and in terms of that kind of colour of the maid, the black, you know, the maid's outfit. I mean, how is that a contrast in this space, and how does your character contrast in the space as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because she's sort of the antithesis of her costume. You know, it's got a rigidity about it, and she's actually quite loose and floppy and sort of inappropriate in her gesture and physicality, and she doesn't really know the boundaries. So in a way, she's busting out of her costume metaphorically. Speaking in more ways than one.
Like that kind of process of, does the character inform the costume? Does the costume inform the character? How's that work in your process?
I think that'll probably become a bit clearer as we get into the theatre and we have that play and technical rehearsals, and you sort of find different shapes that you can make, because certainly it lends itself to great angles because it's black, and I think black against this set is going to look fantastic. So I think it'll be something that will keep evolving.
In that play, Rachel, when coming into a space like this, Amanda was alluding to it before, that there are actions you're doing in civvies, that's the right word.
Skivvies.
I was going to say, in a skivvy, in civilian clothes,
Yeah.
that you're just doing, that you'll have to do differently, I guess, or modify the actions because of the costume as well. How's that, as you, for an actor, making that happen in this next week before we open?
I'm really excited about getting into Stephen's beautiful costumes. It's going to be really interesting, as Amanda was talking about, working in a corset, because in the rehearsal room, when we are wearing, you know, something similar to what we'll be wearing, but not exactly the same, like just things like sitting. There have been a few things where we're sitting on the chaise and I'll just slump down for a second for a moment, and I'll think, oh no, I won't be doing that because I've got a corset on. So you have to kind of use your body in a totally different way and express yourself in a different way, in a much cleaner, I guess, more precise way than you could if you didn't have the restrictions of corsetry. And I was thinking about it yesterday. I've got stockings, boots, corset, petticoat, overskirt, now some blanket thing lining the skirt, because you can see my corset through it, a skirt, gloves, a shirt, a vest, a jacket, a muff, a hat, gloves, and you know, I'm about to pass out just saying this. It's just so it's going to be very interesting. And as Stephen was saying, throughout the course of the play, Claire gets a few items of clothing off, and I think I'll be really looking forward to those moments. Nothing against your design. The other thing about hot going to Mount Isa.
Oh yes. Andrea, you talked about, well, there was a conversation that this is a play in 3 acts. How many intervals do we have?
Just one interval.
One interval. And what's the running time of the show?
So the first act is about 40 minutes an interval, and then the second act, Jodie, is about 55 minutes, I think, just under an hour. So it's a short, sharp night in the theatre with enough time to grab a drink at interval.
Oh, we love that.
We love it.
It's interesting because often what we will do too is look at sight lines in the theatre. They're pretty quite open, so most people can see all the way down. There is one entrance, this back curtain rises. There's not much of an issue there, though. No one does much action back there, so all the sightlines are... The action that happens in the rear stage area is all off stage, essentially, in Mamet's mind, and that's the way Andrea has blocked it. There's some people sitting right at the sides won't see that the upstage centre part of the stage, but nearly all of the action happens in the downstage half of the set. It'd be, I think, very intimidating for this row right here.
But great to sit up on the balcony, because you probably can't see it sitting where you are, but there's the most amazing floor. It's before you leave today, come and have a look at it, because the paintwork on it is just exquisite. And from the balcony, that's going to look absolutely amazing. I'm trying to work out how I can put this in my downstairs room after the show. Anyway.
We did allude to this too. This show will be touring through regional Queensland. If I can just... Oh, my arm's not going to be long enough. It's going to Gold Coast, Ipswich, Toowoomba, Gladstone, Mackay, Cairns, Townsville, Mount Isa and Nambour. So if you know any people in those centres, it would be great to tell them that it's coming too, so that they can get onto our website and and read up about it, because it's great. When we go out into regional Queensland, we see it as part of our responsibility as a state theatre company, not the Brisbane Theatre Company, but the Queensland Theatre Company, and to get out and to make sure that we use our resources to fulfil that brief. And I don't know if you knew that Black Diggers we did a live broadcast, lots of people nodding, last year, which went to thousands of people throughout regional Queensland, which was just such a great thing. That show now is going to Perth Festival, Adelaide Festival, it's going to Canberra, Melbourne, Newcastle and Bendigo as part of a national tour this year, which is great. In fact, we've got 5 shows touring throughout the country this year, which is a bit of a record for the Queensland Theatre Company, so it's pretty amazing. Now, this is our time to hand over to you. If you have any questions about the show that you might want to ask, people's phone numbers, things like that. What I'll do is I'll listen to the question, I'll make sure I put it through the microphone so everyone can hear, and then we'll answer it there. The gentleman over there, put his hand up first. What are the elements of practical aesthetics?
Oh, okay. Well, in a nutshell, David Mamet, being a writer, was interested in actors really going to the text first. And there's nothing about the technique that is particularly groundbreaking, really. It's just about good acting. And it's interesting that both Stephen and David, as creatives, work exactly the same way. Let's go to the text first rather than imposing something that's not there, that's not coming from a text. So I guess that the basic element is that Mamet is very keen for the actors to discover from the text where they should be taken, rather than putting stuff onto the text. And he does it for you, though, because as Amanda was saying, the rhythms guide you. And sometimes we're scratching our heads about meaning, but when we just simply commit to the rhythms, the meaning is really apparent. So really it's about working off each other, actors really working off each other. He forces the actors into a dance. In every play he writes, he does this, where you're really in that dance and you don't quite know what the next step's going to be until the other actor takes you there. Oh, okay, now we're going over here. No. So as an actor, with this work, you need to be, which I think is the case with every well-written play.
It sounds very Shakespearean too, in some respects, where the structure and the rhythm dictates the action.
He has this little term, which he probably stole from someone else, saying, invent nothing, deny nothing. Meaning, don't make stuff up and don't deny what's really there in the moment. Meaning, what's there in the moment between you and the other actor, and what's there from the script. So, yeah, it's about really delving what's going on. Does that make sense? Yeah.
A bit.
Yeah, good.
Looking for hands. Lady here. Do you think men will enjoy the undressing as much as the women? Sorry, enjoy the play as much as the women?
Definitely. In fact, some of his writing is quite derogatory about men. I think I say several times Men live to be deceived. And that's what I'm doing at the opening of the play. I'm playing every field in my character.
The humour is the thing, and I think men will absolutely love it. Because the humour is, it's fantastic. It's very, very witty repartee. So no, I don't think it has favours a female audience at all, not at all.
Wouldn't be a problem if it did.
No, but
I think it's all right for men to actually go into a piece. Oh, sorry, now I'm being more defensive. It's all right for men to go into a piece which has maybe got a very, very strong female aesthetic in it. I think that as men, I don't feel threatened by that, and I think that it's not a bad thing if you feel like you're going into something that's new and different to your view of the world. And I think that I'll shut up.
It's not too. I mean, I think a lot of the press has come out that it's very lesbian, but it's not really, is it? I mean, it is. I mean, they are obviously in they're very, very close friends.
It's a universal theme.
It's love. Yeah. It's love more than anything else. But I think the men and the women will love that side of it. That it is about love and betrayal.
Lady at the back first.
When did Mamet set the play?
When did Mamet set the play?
Well, he doesn't actually say anything, but there are a couple of hints, things that are referred to, like he refers to geopolitics. Now, the book was not written on geopolitics till 1905, so we've kind of made that, and it talks about carriages. There are carriages in the street, so you've got a few hints about when it is. So yeah, we really took it from the clues in the play. Yeah.
Yes.
But yes, it's certainly set in that turn of the century.
In Boston.
In Boston. Yeah.
It's a gentleman here, yes.
It's not very intellectual, but you made so much fuss about it before. Why don't you rake a theatre?
The question is, we've made such a big song and dance about the stage. Why didn't we rake the stage so everyone in the auditorium could see that? I'm going to hand over to Stephen.
Thanks. Will you see other things from where you're sitting that they won't see? And that's the wonderful thing about theatre. It's not like film where you're told what to see. In theatre, your eyes can go wherever you like, and you can be looking there while the action's happening over there. I did consider raking the floor. In the end, it was because it's touring, that became a really complex issue for touring. And also, I love rakes, and that they do create a heightened way of working the stage for the actors. But I just felt it was pushing the meringue, the artifice a bit too far, actually. So come and see it twice, sit upstairs the second time.
Can I say something about
Please.
that? As an actor, I've been doing this a very long time, and I've worked on many rakes, and it really damages your back, especially if you're in high heels. I've had to do musicals on rakes where I've had to dance and do cartwheels on rakes. And the fact that we're wearing corsets in this as well, would have been a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. But Phil, I mean, are they allowed to come up and have a look at the end? Please come up. It's just
Hopefully
so exquisite.
I should say too that for those who don't understand what a rake is, it's a slight incline. So, and most theatres, especially the older theatres, would have a rake that would go from, let's say, stage level and just slightly go back as an idea of presenting the performance. So that's, it's leaning the stage towards you a bit more and gives a different kind of sense of perspective and journey. The older theatres you'll find a lot of.
About that too. I don't know if any of you saw Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf that QC did 2007, and I played Martha in that, in the Cremorne, and we had, I think it's almost as steep as you could make that rake. And I was in high heels, and my God, it was fun, and it felt kind of dangerous. Terrible for my back, because you felt like you were almost tipping into the audience, which made it very intimate. But yeah, it is absolute hell on your back.
Ruth Cracknell really ruined her back forever. Ruth used to say to me, "Oh dear God, please don't let there be a rake."
There was a question here first. Yes, thank you.
It sounds like this is an original set. Did David Mamet give any instruction?
it's an original set. It sounds like it's an original set. Was there any instruction? Is there any kind of copying of other productions in this design? I'll hand it over to Stephen again.
No, he didn't give any instructions at all, actually. In fact, he was tantalisingly obscure about that. And in any case, I would never set it the way any other designer had done it, even if I liked what they'd done.
It's in fact very rare. Like something like Lion King or Wicked is a franchise show, so you buy everything or rent everything in terms of the design and all of that stuff. You buy it from the original producers of it. Almost entirely the shows that, actually I could say all the shows that the Queensland Theatre Company puts on are either toured in from another company that's like us, but we never buy someone else's design. They're always original designs here, even though the script may be around for many years, that it's always originally designed for you. So it's another expression of individual artistic merit too, to say this is what we're thinking now and making it now. There's a gentleman here who has a question. What does that mean? Oh, well, actually, anyone know? With pleasure. Is that right? And the idea of a drawing room comedy, which is maybe not an accurate description of the play. What do you think, Andrea? A drawing room comedy in what is a Parisian temple of love.
Yes,
is there a tension there?
I guess, as Stephen was saying, we haven't created an actual space, a realistic space. It's a theatrical space, and I think that that's a much more interesting way to go. Do you create a lifelike room, or do you create something that really sparks the audience's imagination? And of course, don't forget that David's going to do all sorts of extraordinary things with lighting on this set. So it will take, at times it will feel like a temple, but at many times it won't at all. It will feel like a drawing room. So that's the beauty of theatre, that we can create something that will allow the audience to do a lot of work as well, which is really exciting. Yeah.
We've got time for maybe one more question, if there was anyone. The lady here.
Could they have a whole different feel if it was set like in current times and in modern times?
If you set the play in current times and modern times, would the play have a very different feel?
Who wants to answer that?
Yeah.
Great. I think you. I think it'd be hard to set this I mean, you could do it. I was having a look at, there was an Italian production in Italian that was contemporary. As you do, you just flick through to see what other people have done, what ideas you can steal, what you hate, there's so much about it that is, but you could, a lot of things get contemporised. I think the beauty of it is the period too, and the fact that these women were so shocking for the time. I think makes it so delicious. And why would you want to contemporise it? There's so much about the language that is really contemporary. There are times, when Anna and Claire are both, so speaking in such flowery language, and then they just become so sort of gutter. It's very contemporised, that energy, which is just gorgeous. She says, "Tell to the Marines," and lines like that. So,
That wonderful tension. I remember seeing a production of La Liaison Dangereuse, and that whole idea of it was set in a very contemporary way, in contemporary dress. And it's interesting, there are sometimes, little things you go, oh, is that working or that not working? But that sense of, do you, the audience, have to create the connections with the modern world, or are we doing it for you? That wonderful sense of dialogue between the audience's reception of the work and the intention of the artist. I love all that stuff. I think we can just have the gentleman's question up the back, yes? Oh no, just you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the process you go through to get to today. So you've obviously all read the script and interpreted it somehow, and then you've got line design that goes off that, the set design, and the actors off that. Is that the typical way you go about it?
Maybe if you just talk us through the timeline, Andrea, of how things developed to where we are now.
Sure. Well, for this, we were sitting around a table. I threw the idea of the play in. Wesley went, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's take that to the regions and see if they like the idea. They love the idea, so we go, great. Then we go...
So that's about 12 months ago.
That was a while ago. And then Wesley said, oh, who would you like to design? I said, oh, can I have Stephen Curtis? I said, oh, we'll see if Stephen's available. So that was fantastic. And I said, well, I'm not going to do a show in the Playhouse unless David Walters is my lighting designer. So that was pretty, and luckily
That's
David was
6
available.
months ago? 6 months ago?
So I had my design team, and then there's the casting, which, so you then go, oh, this is my dream team. I've got my dream team, which is fantastic. So all those negotiations happen. So once it's cast and we have the creative team...
And casting was about 4 months ago-ish.
About that. And so then the designers and I... because of Stephen coming up from Sydney and things, unfortunately David wasn't part of our very first meetings. Normally he would be. But that's a really exciting time because we then sit down and go, oh, okay, what are we going to do with this? And Stephen and I sort of started with what we didn't like, and that's often a great place to start. And so then we all get together. Stephen has obviously, then we met with David and with Phil. We had lots of discussions around what is this play about and what do we want to say with this play. The actors obviously have the scripts. I had chats to everybody before we had rehearsal. We started rehearsal on this on the 22nd of December, which is a ridiculous time to start rehearsal. I had got back from London on the Saturday beforehand, so I was a bit, anyway. And so we meet, we read the play, and then we all talk about what we think it's about. So there's a lot of discussion about what we think it's about. And I love that because often everyone has a very different idea, and we sort of end up meeting somewhere in the middle.
And rehearsals are about 4 weeks long?
So we rehearse for 4 weeks, and I was saying to the girls, I get a bit sad when we get to the theatre, because even though it's wonderful to see it all up, for me the rehearsal room is the most exciting time, because that's where all the discovery happens. And when I start rehearsing a play, I do not know what it's going to look like. I don't know how we're going to block it. I know what the set looks like and the furniture we're going to have in it, but I don't know how it's going to go, and that's a discovery, which is so exciting. So we do that for 4 weeks, and then we end up... Today, this is our 5th week. Tomorrow's our last day in the rehearsal room. We're doing a final one in the rehearsal room tomorrow, and then we're in here teching on Wednesday.
Teching, doing all the lighting and sound cues and putting all that together, ready for dress runs
rehearsals.
In full costume. And the first preview is Saturday night. The second preview is Australia Day, kind of on the Monday. Third preview on the Tuesday. Fourth preview on the Wednesday, and then opening Thursday week. So that gives you a sense of how that all works. It's all go.
And our dialect coach was in with us right from the word go in rehearsal too.
Okay, go on.
Where are you doing all of this?
On holiday. Well, in fact, I was a bit on holiday. As the artistic director, it's really about getting the team together. And, we talk about, design, and there's different design processes that you look at, and I'd question things and go, why is that like that, and why is that like that, and, well, we can't afford that, and how about this, and, or at one point, actually, this is a really interesting thing, when we originally budgeted this show, well, we didn't even know it was this show, we did a generic budget for a show, and we hadn't budgeted for it to be a period show, with period costumes. To make a costume like this would take weeks and weeks of labour. And so the budget said you couldn't do it, so we had to go back and argue that to do the costumes that were needed to be done, so sometimes I didn't fall. I had to argue it too. We had to argue it together and go and get the money to make things happen. So there's a lot of that back and forward. And as artistic director, it's about kind of keeping an eye on things and talking to Andrea about casting and going, is that, well, what about and how about? And so it's a lot about conversation and then about being on holiday. We should wrap this up. Apparently it's not raining, so that it's a great time to make a mad dash. Before we go, I've got to pull a rabbit out of the hat. Well, let's let Amanda pull the rabbit out of the hat, shall we? Amanda, come and it's a lucky door prize. Okay, we ready? Here we go.
Orange B76.
Oh, so disappointed. Orange, oh yes, well done. Come down and see us after and we'll give you what is, and this is what the prize is. It's, It's dinner for two, so dinner for you and me at the communal bar and eat house to the value of $100. So well done. It's this is a new restaurant just opposite the Treasury Casino. So you can have a little a meal on that. I'll give that to you afterwards and grab a little picture of it all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. It's just so great to have you. I don't know if people, many of you may remember this, when we used to have these play briefings at the Bill Brown studio at our home, and we would get about 100, which was always good, but now we're getting like 200, 250 of you. It's just so great to have you here. So thank you for making the effort under the threat of rain. And I know you'll all come and see this particular show, but tell your friends about it. If you don't have friends, find some friends. Just tell them everything. And can I just say thank you too for making 2014 one of the most amazing years for Queensland Theatre Company. Just to tell you things like Macbeth, I think I crowed about this forever. Macbeth was the highest selling show for the Queensland Theatre Company in 21 years. So that was amazing. And that all of our shows, bar 3, made profits for the show, surpluses for the company. So we were selling more tickets than we'd even planned to sell. And that's because of people like you who come and take the risk and make theatre really important in your life. So share that love of theatre, bring some people. We've got some great shows this year. If you haven't already filled out your forms and things, I know Maggie's out there, she'll kind of crash tackle you. But if there are people you know who you think, come on, have a go, get 3 plays and just come and take a risk and share your love of theatre. That's what it's all about. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's wonderful to see you, and we'll see you in the theatre very soon. Drive carefully. Thank you.